teaching. So this class will be the comprehensive class. Good morning, students. So it will be the comprehensive class covering the various aspects of teaching, including the definition, the characteristics, and the levels of teaching. Right. So very good morning to all of you. So shall we start? Good morning. Good to see all the students in the class. All right. So I'll wait for a moment so that you all can join. Very good morning. Alright, so let's begin with this topic, concepts of teaching. As you know, in your first unit, that is the teaching aptitude. First unit, teaching aptitude. The very first topic is about the teaching, the characteristics and all about teaching. So today we are going to study that topic 1 from your unit 1, right? You all must be having your syllabus. So the very first thing given in your syllabus, I'll read it out. So it's there, teaching, concept, levels of teaching, characteristics of teaching. So in today's class, concept, characteristics, and levels we are going to cover up in detail, right? So after attending today's class, these 3 things will be very clear to all of you, right? So now, as you know what we are going to study in today's class, let's begin, right? So let's see about teaching. In my intro session, in my trial session also, I have discussed about teaching, the concept of teaching, alright? So the teaching, what is teaching? It is actually a communication, as I have already told that what is teaching? Teaching is a communication, right? What is happening between us? We are communicating. Very good morning, students. So what is happening between us right now? We are communicating, right? I am communicating to you, and in case you are having any doubt, you will communicate back, right? So it is a communication between 2 or more persons who influence each other by ideas, and in this process of teaching, 2 or more persons are, good morning, so 2 or more persons influence each other, right, with their ideas and learn something in the process of interaction, and both of them learn something in the process of interaction. It is to fill in the minds of learner by information and knowledge. So what is teaching? Teaching is actually the process of filling in the minds of the learners with the information and knowledge of facts which they can use in future, right? So it is a process in which the learner, teacher, curriculum and other variables are organized in a systematic way to attain some predetermined goal. So in this, you can take out the characteristic of definition also. From this line, you can see various characteristics of teaching, that teaching is a process. Teaching has certain variables. Learner, teacher, curriculum and other. And the teaching is organized in such a way to attain the predetermined goal, right? So the duration of the class will be 1 hour. Good morning. So this particular thing is clear to everybody, that in teaching there is some predetermined goal. A teacher has some predetermined goal and the student also has some goal that they attain the teaching process, right? Clear? So alright, one thing I want to ask you all, that if there is any doubt to anybody, you are free to ask in between the class and I'll address to all your doubts, right? So this is the basic of this. The batch has already started, and the contact number Nikhil sir has given. In case you don't have, it will be you can check it out on the app itself, and on YouTube also he has mentioned the phone number. And this thing has started, batch has started. From today itself, this is the first class in your batch. So trial classes, I don't have any idea regarding that. I'll inform you afterwards. So let's discuss first of all. Let's discuss teaching, and then cut off and different things will be discussed. Yes, variables. I'm going to discuss about variables in the characteristics, right? So teaching portion is clear that teaching is a communication. First thing, it is between 2 or more persons. Teaching is just a communication between 2 or more persons who are influencing each other with the ideas, right? Clear? So let's move forward and see that it is an important part in the process of education. Teaching is an important part in the process of education, and its special function is to impart knowledge, develop skills and understanding. Some renowned scholars have defined teaching as, H.C. Morrison describes teaching as an intimate contact between a mature and a less mature person. H.C. Morrison has defined teaching as that teaching is an intimate contact, close contact between 2 persons, one of whom is mature and the other one is less mature. Means the teacher, more mature is the teacher and the less mature is the student. This is also clear to everybody that teaching is an important part. Beta notes and everything right after the class in the PDF section, you will get to download the notes, right? So once the class gets over, the PDF will be uploaded on the app itself, and from there you can download it. Alright, so it is an intimate contact between more mature and less mature personality. Let's see a few other definitions of teaching. According to Jackson, teaching is a face-to-face encounter between 2 or more persons, one of whom intends to bring changes in the other participants. So Jackson has described it as a face-to-face interaction, and between 2 or more persons, one person intends to bring certain change in the other party. So according to Jackson, this is teaching, and N.L. Gage has described teaching as an interpersonal influence aimed at changing the behavior potential of another person. So N.L. Gage is of view that teaching is an interpersonal contact between 2 persons, and one person intends to change the behavior potential of the another person. So after reading this definition, these points must be clear to everybody that it is a contact between 2 persons, as we have already discussed. In this process, one person aims to bring change in the other person. Alright, so it is a contact where one party intends to bring a certain change in the other party. So this is all about teaching. Next is, teaching can be defined from 3 viewpoints. This can be asked in your examination. So I want to see previous page. Which previous page? This. Here we were discussing about basics of teaching, about the definition of teaching, right? So let's see that teaching can be defined from 3 viewpoints, and this is important. It can be asked in your examination. The 3 viewpoints are autocratic, democratic and laissez-faire, right? So what is autocratic? Let's see what is autocratic viewpoint. According to this viewpoint, teaching is activity of memory level. According to this viewpoint, autocratic viewpoint, teaching is the activity of memory level. There are 3 levels of teaching: memory, understanding and reflective. Alright, so autocratic view is that teaching is the activity of memory level. It does not develop attitude and thoughts among the student. Autocratic view that teaching does not develop attitude and thoughts among the student. Yes, very good, teacher-centered. It is also known as thoughtless teaching, and this teaching is teacher-centered, right? So autocratic view, one is that teaching is the activity of memory level, one thing. Second is it does not develop the attitude in the student. It is also known as thoughtless teaching, means here. Alright. The activity of memory level, alright. Authoritarian or autocratic, right? Authoritarian or autocratic teaching, it is the activity, teaching is the activity of memory level. Teaching is the activity of memory level, means here the teaching is compared to the memory level. Teaching is the activity of memory level, means the student is just what the teacher is teaching when the student is just memorizing those facts. Alright, so this view, this authoritarian or the autocratic viewpoint is that teaching has nothing to do with the other levels. Teaching is just the activity of memory level, right? It does not develop attitude and thoughts among the student. Teaching does not develop the attitude and the thoughts in the student. It is also known as thoughtless teaching, because here the student thought is not developed. Student is not thinking anything. The student is just memorizing the facts that are presented to them. Alright, so this teaching views the teaching as activity of memory level, therefore it is thoughtless level of teaching, and this is teacher-centered teaching. Clear? Any doubt? Alright. Okay, just memorization, yes. Alright, I'll tell the example. Okay, thoughtless teaching also I'm explaining. Alright. So one is the teaching aid. One question was teaching aid. What kind of teaching aid is used? The charts. Chart can be used. Models can be used. Alright, models and charts can be presented to the student to make them clear about some particular thing. Like if I'm teaching to them about the various parts of human body, I can show them the chart so that they can recognize the part as well and memorize those parts, right? So the point is thoughtless teaching. Why is it thoughtless teaching? It is thoughtless teaching from the viewpoint of student, because here the student's thought process is not involved. In this type of teaching, student's thought process is not involved. Here only the student wrote or learned the facts. Those are presented to them, right? Here the thought of student does not play any role. Example is the students of class nursery, of class 1 and 2. They memorize those facts that are presented to them. They do not. It does not involve any thoughts of the student. The students are not thinking any thing. That are just memorizing the facts that are presented to them. Clear? Yes, primary school teaching. Yes, Mamita, rote learning, clear? Now when you will study about memory level, it will be the same. So authoritarian viewpoint is clear? Alright. Teacher-centered is, this type of teaching is teacher-centered because the whole teaching is, the teacher is the main person involved in the whole teaching process. He is the one who's planning the activities, he is the one who's presenting the things to the student, and here the student have secondary role. They just learn, they just mug up those facts that are presented to them, right? Clear? Next is democratic teaching. This is the another style of teaching. This is democratic teaching. Here the teaching happens at the understanding level. Memory level of teaching is the prerequisite. Means, as you know that this is the second style of teaching. This is the second style of, I'm not nervous, beta. Actually, I'm not well. Right? So here it's written over here that memory level of teaching is the prerequisite. Means, as you know that the first is autocratic level of teaching, next is democratic level of teaching. So democratic level of teaching, democratic teaching can only happen once the student has crossed that autocratic level, right? Yes, primary education, autocratic teaching is concerned with the primary education, right? So here it's said in the second point that memory level teaching is a prerequisite. Means the student needs to pass through the memory level and then only this kind of teaching can be initiated on the students, right? This teaching is known as thoughtful teaching. This teaching is known as thoughtful teaching. Here the student thought process is involved. According to this point of view, teaching is an interactive process involving classroom talks which takes place between the student and the teacher, right? Thank you. So this proportion is clear to everybody that teaching is what? It is an interactive process. In democratic teaching, the teaching is an interactive process. Here classroom talk takes place between the student and the teacher, right? In this, student can ask question and criticize the teacher. In this type of teaching, the student can ask the questions like you are asking and they also have the authority to criticize the teacher. In this, student can ask question and self-discipline is insisted. Alright, Farhat, I'll discuss it with the team after the class and I'll let you know, right? Alright, which level democratic teaching applies to understanding level. Means understanding level means the student of the secondary level, right? Secondary level, and here yes I'm explaining the meaning of prerequisite, wait. Alright, and the second thing is like we are also studying over here. Here also democratic teaching is taking place, right? Here also democratic teaching is taking place because here we are open for classroom discussion, classroom talk. Wherever classroom talk is encouraged, where the student can ask question and at the same time can criticize the teacher, that level of teaching is democratic teaching, right? And here in this prerequisite means memory level is prerequisite. Requisite means requirement, pre-requirement. Memory level is the pre-requirement, right? It is I hope this portion democratic teaching is clear. Yes, like current class, democratic teaching I hope is clear to everybody. In case of any doubt in democratic teaching, you are free to ask. Yes, prerequisite means the previous knowledge or the requirement. Alright. So let's move forward with this laissez-faire attitude. What is laissez-faire attitude, right? So it is known as reflective level teaching. This is reflective level of teaching. reflective level is difficult than the other two level. Reflective level is difficult than the understanding and reflective level is difficult than your understanding level. Understanding level means your democratic teaching and memory level means your autocratic teaching or authoritarian teaching, right? So understanding level and memory level are must for the reflective level of teaching. So this is the third phase of teaching, you can say. You can say this is the third type of teaching. So once the student has passed through authoritarian and the democratic, then only we can use this attitude or this type of teaching on them, right? So understanding level and memory level are must for this level of teaching. It is most highly thoughtful activity. This type of teaching is most highly thoughtful activity, and in this level of teaching, both the students and teacher are participants. In this level of teaching, both the students and the teacher are participants, and this level produces insight. This level produces the insight among the students, right? So reflective level of teaching, you can see reflective level of teaching in under which level of, like you can say primary was autocratic, secondary democratic, where you can see laissez-faire attitude. Yes, I am asking for example from you all. Can you all quote one example for this? Yes, university, PhD, research. All right. So in this type of like your university level, your research level, there this kind of teaching takes place, right? So here the student and the teacher both are the participants. This is the most highly thoughtful activity, right? And this level produces insight. Insight means the insight means, class, can you explain what is the meaning of insight? Laissez-faire means this is the style of teaching. Knowledge. Yes. Insight is actually self-reflection, alright. It is the imagination, you can say that, yes, discovery. So it is actually self-reflection. Insight is to think deeply about something, right? So this type of teaching produces insight among the student, as this is the most highly thoughtful teaching activity. Clear? Alright, so I hope this three style of teaching is deep understanding. So I hope this three style of teaching is clear to everybody. And again, I want to mention one thing, that questions are being asked on the style of teaching, right? So I'll quote few questions also with you all. I'll discuss some questions in tomorrow's class. Today, let's cover up the levels of teaching, all the levels of teaching. Pre-university can come, but mainly the style of teaching can be seen in your research programs, right? Yes, very good, Neha. So clear? So now let's quickly discuss the levels of teaching. Yes, first and second year, I said that this type of teaching can be seen there also, but not completely. This type of teaching can be seen in your research program where you make your thesis and all, right? So there the role of the teacher is not dominant. There the student is his own planner and everything. So here both are the participants. Next is your nature and characteristics of teaching. Now let's discuss the nature and the characteristics of teaching. Teaching has different levels. Teaching has three levels: memory level, understanding level, and the reflective level. So there are three levels in teaching. Teaching takes place in a dynamic environment. Teaching takes place in a dynamic environment. So these are the regular classes, and regular classes have started from today itself, right? You will get all the notification about the classes. So here it's written that teaching takes place in a dynamic environment. Dynamic means that it is changing. Alright, so what do you mean by changing environment? Let's discuss few things before explaining this dynamic environment, right? As in the beginning of the class, I have already told that teaching is what? Teaching is a communication. Teaching is a communication between two or more persons. And as you know that communication is very flexible. Communication is very dynamic in itself. Communication changes, right? Communication changes every time. Alright, from person to person, communication changes. So since teaching is communication between two or more persons, and communication is dynamic in itself, therefore teaching is also a dynamic process, right? Clear? So one thing is that teaching is dominated by communication, therefore teaching is dynamic. Second thing is that teaching has three variables. Teaching has three variables. Variables are the things that levels we are going to discuss. Madhurima, we are going to discuss levels. Earlier to this, we were seeing few styles of teaching. Alright, so here it's written that teaching has three variables. Variables are the things that vary, right? So teaching has three variables. These are the interdependent. Alright, it's independent, dependent, right? So it has three variables: dependent, independent, and intervening. Independent means the teacher. The teacher, independent means who's free for himself, right? So yes, variable means that change. So here, independent means the teacher. Remember this thing. Sorry, so here, independent means the teacher. Remember this thing, right? Dependent is the student. And intervening variables are your curriculum, your methods of teaching, right? So here it's written that independent is the teacher. Why is teacher regarded as independent? Because the teacher is free. The teacher is the one who's planning all the activities of the class, right? Teacher plans, and teacher is the main person who is alright, so teacher is the main person who is planning and who plans the class, who plans what is to be taught to the student, when it is to be taught, and how is it to be taught, right? So teacher is the independent variable. He is the person who is responsible for the entire teaching planning of the teaching process, right? Dependent is the student, because student depends on the teacher for his behavior modification. Clear? Student depends on the teacher for his behavior modification. Therefore, the student is the dependent variable. And the third is intervening. Let me explain this intervening to you all. So this intervening means the variables that help or assist the process of teaching. So the variables that help the process of teaching or assist the process of teaching are the variables known as intervening variables. So what are the variables that are assisting the process of teaching? If we consider this particular setup, I am the independent variable, you are the dependent variable. So what are the variables that are assisting us? What are the variables that are assisting me to teach you all? Just quickly think and answer. What are the variables that are helping us? Yes, teaching methods, teaching strategy. So regard this board as the teaching method. This is the teaching method. Materials, yes. So this board is the teaching method. Right. The smart board is the teaching method. And this is helping us in the process of teaching. Chart, models, very good. Curriculum, teaching tools, very good class. Right. So the variables that help us in the process of teaching, be it your notebooks, be it the teaching material, the methods we are using. Right. So these are all the intervening variables. Clear? So as teaching has three variables, teaching involves teacher, student, and all these variables, teaching methods all are involved in the process of teaching, right? And you know that these variables keep on changing. Is it clear to everybody? And do you all agree that these variable changes? And if these variable changes, therefore teaching is also a changing phenomenon, and you can say that teaching takes place in a dynamic environment. All right. So intervening variable changes or not? Yes, intervening variable changes. Right. Prior to this, you were studying in an offline mode. Right. Now we are able to connect on an online platform as well. Therefore, teaching takes place in a dynamic environment. I hope this is clear. The second point is clear to everybody. All right. Next is teaching is closely related with this. Teaching is closely related with education, learning, instruction, and training. So these are not the synonyms of teaching. Like education is not the synonym of teaching, learning, or instruction, right? Education is what? Education. Can anyone explain what is education? Can anyone explain what is education quickly? Yes. Process of getting knowledge. Yes. So actually education is the process of acquiring knowledge. Alright, education is the all-round development. You can say it is the process of acquiring knowledge and skill, right? Next is learning. Learning is behavior modification, right? Education is the process of acquiring knowledge. Learning is the behavior modification as a result of experience. Instruction is to give commands, right? Instruction is to give command, and training is equipping the candidate with a job-related skill, right? Clear? Education is the process of acquiring knowledge. Learning is the behavior modification as a result of the experience. Instruction is the process of giving commands, and training is equipping the candidate with job-related skill. And in all these four processes, teaching plays a very important role. So, like in education, to give the knowledge and to give the skill to the student, teaching is required. To bring some behavior changes in the student, that is the learning. Teaching plays an important role over there also. Alright, so once more, I'm explaining it once more. Like you all know that education is what? It is the process of acquisition of knowledge and skill, right? So for the imparting of knowledge and skill to the students, teaching is required. Teaching plays a very important role to help the student to acquire this knowledge and skill, right? Learning is what? Learning is behavior modification of the student as a result of the experiences, right? So here in learning process also, teaching plays a very important role. Students learn because of the teaching, right? Instruction is the process of giving command, right? Instruction is the process of giving commands to the students. Here also teaching plays an important role, and training is actually equipping the candidates with job-related skills. Right. So in all these four processes, recorded class will be available to you on the course page, right? From where you can access the class. After this class, after I think half an hour, the recording of this class will become available, right? Next, teaching is essentially an intellectual activity. Teaching is what? Teaching is an intellectual activity. Intellectual means mental. So teaching is basically and essentially an intellectual activity. It is something which is related with the mental capacity of the student. Clear? Like for example, if we see the work of a cobbler. Right, if we see a cobbler, one thing. If we see, take an example of a sweeper, right? So both of them does a work which involves their physical activity, right? Both of them, the cobbler, the sweeper, requires the physical activity from them, the labor. If you see, or if you take an example of a labor, here it is what is required from them, their physical activity is required. Alright, who mends shoes? Ravini, who mends shoes, right? So as these type of work requires physical activity, teaching is what? Teaching is an intellectual activity which requires the mental capacity, right? Teaching is an art as well as a science. Teaching is both the art as well as a science. Why? Teaching is an art because it requires some skill to teach the students, right? It requires skills to teach the student. It is a science because some techniques are also involved in teaching, techniques to evaluate the students. There are some skills that are involved in the students which make teaching a science. And teaching is an art because skills, creativity is involved in the process of teaching. To teach the student in a better way, creativity has to be there. Some art or some application of the creativity is must. Clear? Next is teaching is a continuous process. Teaching is a continuous process because it continues to exist. As you all must have heard that learning is a lifelong process. It means that we continue to learn throughout our life. Therefore, teaching also takes place and teaching also doesn't cease at any particular point of time. Teaching also continues its existence, right? Teaching is an interactive process. Teaching is what? Teaching is an interactive process, right? Like we are over here interacting with each other. We are interacting with each other. Therefore, teaching is what? Teaching is an interactive process between the mature person and the less mature person, or you can say the teacher and the student. Clear? an intellectual activity. It is an activity that requires the mental capability of a person, right? It is a mental work, mental task. Interactive is communication, yes. Alright, so now let's move forward towards the levels of teaching. There are 3 levels of teaching. Memory level. Fifth point, teaching is an art as well as a science. Teaching requires some creativity. Therefore, teaching is an art. In teaching, like I am teaching through various ways. I am teaching through various ways, which requires creativity to understand what your students you are going to teach and how to present the material to them so that they can grasp it in a better way. So, teaching is essentially an art. But there is some science also involved in teaching. There is some techniques that are used in teaching. Techniques to evaluate the students, right? Techniques to evaluate the students, and therefore, teaching is what? And it is a science as well. Mental activity or mental task is that requires your brain, right? That requires your mental capacity. So teaching, there are 3 levels in teaching. It can be arranged in a hierarchy. The lowest level of teaching is your memory level of teaching. The lowest level is the memory level of teaching. And the middle level of teaching, or you can say above the memory level, is understanding level of teaching. And the topmost level of teaching is the reflective level of teaching. Clear? So once the student has attained this level of teaching, then he can move towards the understanding level of teaching. And after that only the student can go to the reflective level of teaching. Alright, so here the first level of teaching is the memory level. This is the lowest level of teaching. Above that is understanding level of teaching. And the topmost is the reflective level of teaching. Yes, first level is the primary level, primary education. Alright, so buffering problem is there. I want you all to refresh the page and we'll also check from our side for the buffering problem, right? So, as you all know that teaching is what? It is a purposeful activity. Through teaching, teacher brings a desirable change in the student. Both the concept teaching and learning are related to each other. Clear? This much is clear. Development of complete, that is all-round personality of learner is the ultimate objective of teaching and learning process. So, in teaching, an interaction takes place between the teacher and the learner. We'll discuss about the proponents of these levels, Archana. Alright, so in teaching, an interaction takes place. The main aim of teaching is to bring the change in the behavior of the student. So how to bring the change and what changes are to be brought at each level, we'll be discussing, right? So third point, which third point, Narayana? If you can specify that point, so because here there is no point involved, right? So here it is said that teaching is a purposeful activity, as you all know. So every level has a certain purpose. What we are going to study the various levels, right? So every level has its own purpose. So both the concept, okay. Both the concept, that is teaching and learning, are related to each other. What we teach and what the student learn are both related to each other, right? And it's the development of all-round personality of the learner that is focused in the process of teaching. So here are the 3 levels of teaching that we are going to study now. One is the memory level, which is also known as thoughtless level of teaching. Do remember this, thoughtless level of teaching. So memory level is often referred as the thoughtless level of teaching. Next is understanding is thoughtful level, and reflecting is the upper thoughtful level. So good morning and quickly join the session. We are discussing about the levels of teaching, right? So memory level, Herbert is the main proponent of this level, right? Herbert is the main proponent of this memory level of teaching, and as I have already told that this is the first level of teaching. First level of teaching, this level is concerned with the mental ability or memory that exists in all the living beings. So understanding level is concerned with the mental ability of the student. Teaching at this level is considered to be as the lowest level of teaching, right? Teaching at this level is considered to be as, yes, it is rote learning, right? So here the 3 points that we have discussed on the slide is the main proponent, Herbert Spencer. Next is, it is the first and the thoughtless level. And the teaching at this level is considered to be the lowest level of teaching. This is the lowest level of teaching. This is your memory level. And this is the lowest level of teaching. And therefore, this is referred to as the thoughtless level of teaching. Here, the thought process of the student does not play any role, right? And it is concerned with just the mental ability of the student. At this level, thinking ability of the student does not play any role. Student only cram. The student only cram the facts, the formula, the information and the laws that are taught to them. It's actually the main proponent, means who propounded this memory level of teaching. The question can be asked upon the name the person who propounded this memory level. So it is Herbert Spencer, right? No, it does. The theories doesn't come in this chapter. We'll be discussing about the theories in the later part of the course plan, alright? So here it's written over here. It's given that the thinking ability of the student does not play any role in this type of teaching. Here the student only learn or cram the facts, the formula and the information that are presented to them by the students, right? The role of teacher is the primary and that of student is secondary. This point is important for you all, that whose role is primary and whose role is secondary. So the teacher's role is the primary in this level of teaching and the student has a secondary place. And the study materials that are presented to the students are pre-planned. Whatever are presented to the students are pre-planned and it is organized well in sequence and it is just presented to the students to learn. Alright, is it clear to everybody? So we'll discuss about this. Various teaching methods that are used in this level of teaching. Can anyone name the teaching methods that are used in this level of teaching? The teaching methods used in this memory level of teaching is, can anyone? Alright, so the teaching methods that are used in this method of teaching is the drill method, the review method or the revision method. Yes, drill method. What is drill method? lecture method is not used in this type of teaching because here the main purpose is to make the students cram the facts that are being presented to them. So drill method is actually the repetition of certain things so that the student get hold of that particular concept. Alright, so drill is basically repetition of a particular concept. Yes, repeatedly saying something. Very good. And next is, yes, so if I keep on repeating a particular thing in front of you all, what will happen? That will make a permanent mark in your mind. You will get to learn that thing faster because what happens, I am repeating that particular thing in front of you again and again. Alright, so drill method is used, review and revision method is used, questioning method of teaching is used. So the various methods that are being used and the various teaching methods that are being used here is the drill, the review revision method and the questioning method, right? And the teaching equipment, these are the methods. What are the teaching aids that are being used in this type of teaching? So the teaching aids used in this type of teaching are the charts, models, maps, figures, etc. Clear? So this is the basic about the memory level of teaching. Yes, drill is actually the repetition of the subject matter. So this is your memory level. Again, I'll repeat about the memory level that this is the lowest level of teaching. One thing, the very first thing is that this is the lowest level of teaching. Second is that in this level of teaching, thought process of the student does not play any role. This is the thoughtless level. Here, the teacher has the primary role and the student has the secondary role. This type of teaching is teacher-centered. Here, the subject matter is pre-planned and organized, and the student just cram those facts that are presented to them. Clear? So the students are presented the subject matter in a sequential manner, and the evaluation system that are included is oral, written, and essay type. Oral is that they are asked to say the table of 2, say the table of 3, 4, 5. All right, written test can be there, and essay type test means the long answer type test. All right, so long answers can be given to them so that they can just cram those answers and write it down. Right. So this level lacks perception. Psychologically, it is referred to as cognitive level of teaching. So this lacks perception. Here, the thought process of the student is absent. Therefore, this level lacks perception, and it is referred to as cognitive level psychologically. Yes, the questions, the points that I have included here are the very important points that could be asked. Alright, so I hope this basic of memory level is clear to everybody. Herbert is the main proponent and rest we have studied. We'll revise this after this class, right? So if we see on the merits of the memory level of teaching, what are the merits of the cognitive level of teaching? One is useful for the student at the lower classes. At the lower classes, when the students are small, there this type of teaching is very useful. Alright, this is because because of the underdevelopment and intellectual student have rote memory, right? So cognitive here means, again, cognitive. My question is to you all class, that what is actually cognitive? Can anyone explain what is cognitive? Yes, thinking ability. Yes, it's related to mental function, it's the thinking ability, and yes, so it is related to the mental capacity of the students. It is related, cognitive is actually related with the mental capacity of the student, and therefore memory level of teaching is psychologically a cognitive activity. So the merits is that it is useful for the students of lower classes as they have the underdevelopment of their intellectual ability, and therefore they can only learn the facts, they cannot use much of their thinking process, right? So therefore this level is useful for the lower level of students or the students at the lower classes. The role of teacher is important, and therefore he or she is free to make choices of the subject matter, plan it and can present it at his will. Must be clear, this is very common and basic thing, so I'm not going much into detail. Next is knowledge acquired at this level forms the basis. Very important, it forms the basis for the future when student thinking and intelligence is needed, right? So here, the knowledge, whatever knowledge the students acquire, it's very useful for the future, right? When he attains, when his thinking is required, when his intelligence is required, at that point of time, this knowledge will be helpful for the students. For example, in the primary level, students are made to learn the tables. Students are made to learn the words. Students are made to learn few formulas. All these will help them when they'll reach to the higher classes like 3, 4, when they have to multiply, when they have to add, when they have to subtract. There the tables will play an important role. The words that are being taught to them in future, these words that they have memorized in their primary classes will help, right? So whatever the knowledge they are acquiring at this level will help them in future classes or future, right? And MLT acts as the first step. So this is the first step. Although this is the thoughtless level of teaching, but this level is the first step, and the students need for the other two levels. So this memory level of teaching, only once the student has gone through this level of teaching, then only he can attain success in both these levels, right? So there are some demerits also, as the student only learn the things by cramming. So the ability of the learners are not, the complete development of the learners does not take place at this level. As the student learns by rote, knowledge gain does not prove beneficial in the real life situation. The learners are kept in strict discipline. In this level of teaching, the learners are kept in strict discipline, right? And intelligence does not have any importance in this teaching, and therefore it lacks motivation. Next is your understanding level. The second level is understanding level of teaching. Understanding level, first is this, Morrison is the main proponent. As Herbert propounded this memory level of teaching, Morrison propounded understanding level of teaching. Understanding something means to perceive the meaning, grasp the idea and comprehend the meaning. What is the meaning of understanding? Understanding means to perceive the meaning, means to get hold of the meaning. to grasp the idea, means to understand what this particular concept means, what the idea, right? And to comprehend the meaning. Yes, very well said, Archana. Memory plus insight, right? So we'll discuss about that. So first of all, Morrison is the main proponent, and understanding level means that to understand some particular concept, understand the particular concept, that is to comprehend the meaning, understand the meaning, right? It is insight plus memory, as this is the second step. First is your memory level. Next is the understanding level. So this is your second step. So therefore, it is addition of one thing. On the first step was memory. On the second step, something adds to the memory. Memory is there in the first step. At the second step, something gets added to the memory. That is the insight. Right, so this is insight plus memory, because it goes much beyond just memorizing the facts, because in this level we are not only memorizing the facts, we are gaining or attaining the mastery of the subject. We are attaining mastery of the subject because we are now able to understand the subject, right? So here it is memory plus insight. Here the teacher at understanding level is of higher quality. Here the teaching is of higher quality than the one at memory level. It is more thoughtful and useful from the viewpoint of mental ability. So this type of teaching is thoughtful and it is useful as well. At this level, the teacher explains the student about the relationship between the facts and principle and teaches them how they can apply this principle. Means here, in this level, the teacher is teaching them the relationship, right? The teacher is teaching them the relationship between the facts that they have memorized in the memory level. Here, the teacher will tell them the relationship between those facts, the principles, and also teaches them that how they can apply this principles and fact, where they can apply, right? So memory plus insight is basically, memory is what we were studying at the memory level, right? Just the cramming of the fact. And insight means to think and to get hold of the particular concept that we are studying. Yes, deep study of the facts. Means deep knowledge. Insight is actually a depth knowledge of a particular concept. So it is insight plus memory, because here we are gaining the mastery of the subject. Here the teaching is useful. It is more thoughtful. At this level, now the teacher is explaining the students. The teacher is explaining the students about the relationship between the facts, the principles, right? It's said over here that memory level barrier is necessary to be crossed for this level of teaching. Means this is the second level of teaching. Therefore, memory level should be crossed to reach this level, right? It provides opportunity for the student to develop intellectual behavior. This level of teaching provides an opportunity to the student to develop intellectual behavior. The student and the teacher both has active role. Okay, in the prior learning, in the prior teaching, memory level of teaching, only the teacher has the active role, the student has secondary role. But here the teacher and the student both have active role. This is important. And the evaluation here includes essay and objective type question. Here the evaluation includes essay and, yes, the methods I'm going to teach. Okay, here the the evaluation is essay and objective type test. Clear? So much so far is clear to everybody. So the methods, what happened? So the methods that are used in this type of teaching are lecture method, discussion method, exemplification method. So the methods used are lecture method, in which the teacher gives lecture on a particular concept in an attempt to explain the relationship between the facts and figures, between the facts and the principles. Discussion method is used. Exemplification method means giving example as well as teaching. Yes, the demonstration method. So these are the methods, various methods that are used in the process of this understanding level of teaching. Clear? And the teaching methods will be the flashcards, the charts, models, right? So welcome to the class, beta. So I hope this much is clear to everybody. So now let's move on to the reflective level of teaching. The last and the topmost level of teaching is the reflective level of teaching. So first let's see that Hunt is the main proponent. Which method? Recall method? I can't get this question. Can it said recall method? Please be specific data so that I can answer. Alright, so here the Hunt is the main proponent. This level is also known as introspective level of teaching. This is introspective level of teaching, right? It means thinking deeply. Introspecting level means thinking deeply about something. Yes, recall method also comes under understanding level of teaching, right? So here it said that it's thinking deeply about something. Reflecting means giving careful thoughts to something over a period of time. So in understanding level, what was happening? The student was able to understand the subject matter, right? But in reflective level, the student goes one step further, right? He goes one step further. Means here he can think deeply about a particular subject. He can think about his subject in a deeper manner. Alright, so this is your English class, Billy, and here the mode of instruction will be English, and there will be a batch of same topic in Hindi at 3:30. You can join that session, right? So this reflective meaning is clear to everybody. Reflective means to think deeply about something. It means to think about something and get your own ideas, right? It is considered to be the highest level at which teaching is carried out, and it includes both understanding and the memory level, right? So this level includes both the previous levels as well. Means without the memory level and without understanding level, we cannot go to reflective level, right? So this is the topmost level, this is the highest level, whose proponent is Hunt, and it involves both these levels of teaching. It is highly thoughtful and this is highly useful. This level of teaching is student-centered. Yes, this is the student-centered teaching method, and student can attain this level only after going through the previous two levels. And here the main role is of the student. The teacher plays a passive role. Here the main role is of the student. Yes, very good, Narayan. So inquiry, discovery, projective, heuristic methods are used in this type of teaching. So I hope this reflective level is also clear to everybody. Now we'll conclude this class with one question that was being asked on 2nd of December. I think evening match, right? So let's conclude this class with one question, and in tomorrow's class we'll be including few more questions. So the question is, there are 3 levels. It's a match the following type of question: memory level, understanding level, and the reflective level. Options are So this is the match the following type of question that was being asked in 2019 2nd December batch, evening batch, right? So options are memory level, understanding level, and reflective level. The options given to you was: 1 is problem solving and raising, 2nd is recall of facts and information, 3 is affects and feelings, and the last is seeing of relationship between facts and principle. So you have to match the various levels of teaching with their outcomes. So quickly answer memory level. What will be the outcome of memory level? At memory level, we will be able to recall the facts and information. So whatever has been taught to the student can recall all those informations because they have learned those information, right? So memory level, the correct answer for memory level is 2. Understanding level, in understanding level, the student can see the relationship between facts and principles, right? Because here they have understood the topic, they have understood the concept, so they can easily establish the relationship between the facts and principles. Yes, okay. And reflective level, yes, very good. Understanding level, 4th, reflective level. What will be the correct answer for reflective level? Alright, more of you please answer. Very good. Alright, so reflective level is concerned with the problem solving and problem raising ability of a student. Under reflective level, a student can raise his problem and can solve the problem as well. So these are the levels of teaching, and this is how the questions are being asked on the various levels of teaching. So in tomorrow's class, we'll be including more such questions. So be prepared for tomorrow's class. Yes, and that will affects and feelings that we'll discuss under the objectives that we are going to discuss tomorrow. In tomorrow's session, we'll discuss about the objectives of teaching. So yes, we'll be including previous year questions topic wise. So whichever topic we'll cover, we'll discuss the questions also. So this was all for today, and in tomorrow's session, we'll be discussing principles and objectives. So be on time so that you can take much advantage from the class. So thank you so much, students. Keep learning, and you'll get the notes. So all the best. Thank you.